Welcome all, Coleman Report Live, pre-Memorial Day edition, May 22nd, 20. Katie Watucky, our editor, Lance Sexton, our extraordinaire. Welcome, everyone.
It's great to be here, Bob.
Pause, and that's what you're supposed to say. Thank you for having me here.
Hey, Bob, I'm building a boat now because we've gotten about 2 inches of rain this morning.
Will SBA 7A lending shut down if PP round 2 allocation runs out? What's your opinion?
Well, Bob, this one, I'm not sure PPP allocation is going to run out, but Katie will probably share with us there's legislation in process to make sure SBA 7A lending is okay.
Good. Yeah, you're right. 60% are right. Second poll question. Have you seen fraudulent tax returns have you ever seen fraudulent tax returns? Lance, I'm sure that's a yes for you.
Well, I think that not me specifically, Bob, but I think financial institutions across the country are finding examples of businesses that should not apply, shouldn't have applied, that may not exist, that have fraudulent returns.
Wow, I would expect that to flip-flop. Okay, very good. Hey, Katie, what's going on with the Senate?
So the Senate did pass the Small Business Lending Continuity Act of 2020, which is going to fix the error that was in the CARES Act that would result in the SBA 7A program being shut down when PPP runs out. So that did pass in the Senate. It's now moving on to the House. From what I can tell, the House was supposed to address that sometime this week, maybe early next week. So that does look like that's going to pass and that error will be fixed.
Good, good. Yeah, and I know that's important. What we're going to do today, let's see, I'm going to have Katie talk about Fraud Friday a little bit, and then Lance, we're going to answer a bunch of questions. So what's going on with Fraud Friday that you're going to release today, Katie?
So later today, I will release the article giving us an update on what's happening with the Carrie Agee case. What recently happened in February was her husband and an executive at Bank Serve were recently sued by her trustee because the trustee is claiming that she gave them money throughout her fraud scheme, and then they used that money and she can recover that money. So there will be more information on that when that article is released later.
Two important things came out. We have heard rumors for years that what happened was Bank Serve was collecting the payments from the customers, then holding it, then remitting it to Coleman 30 days later. And we've heard rumors for years that has been out of balance. And for the first time, we have documentation where the trustee alleges that trust account is $800,000 short. Correct, Katie?
Yeah, somewhere between 800 and 801,000.
Anyway, we're gonna we'll do that this afternoon. Hey, Lance, we got a ton of questions. We thank you for the questions. We apologize for the ones we didn't get to, but Lance, let's go ahead. Give us your best shot. I think we have 8 questions.
Well,
go for it.
Guys, canceled checks and ACH payments are the same. You just need some sort of proof. I mean, I do everything I do online as well, and when I need proof of payment, I can print out a payment confirmation. I know if you guys go online and pay a credit card payment, the last option after you pay it is print confirmation if you pay a utility bill online. In fact, I just paid my natural gas bill today, and the final step is print payment confirmation. I know quite often we pass on that, but those payment confirmations are just as good as a canceled check. Or a bank statement that would show, the bank statement would show who it was paid to and the amount. Those are all acceptable. It does not have to just be canceled checks. In fact, I think there'll be more ACH payment confirmations than anything else in the forgiveness documentation.
Second question, Joseph.
Well, this is kind of a trick question, Bob, because you've got an ineligible borrower who, will they be able to ask for forgiveness if they're not eligible? The answer is no. It's going to flip into an 18-month unforgiven loan with a payment they may not like, but, part of the process, first of all, we relied significantly on eligibility determination from information provided by the borrowers. But an ineligible borrower cannot get payment forgiveness. That's going to be one of those that turns into a 1%, 2-year loan, 18 months worth of payments after the deferment. The answer is no.
Lance, what do we do if we have someone making over 100 grand a year? How does that affect the calculation for PPP?
But it's pretty simple. This happened a lot with sole proprietors and contractors and so forth, Bob. A contractor, has a 1099 that showed they made 120 grand, and the basis for that would be 100,000 divided by 12 would give you your monthly payroll times 2.5 times gives you the loan amount. So again, no salary paid or no income earned by a proprietor or contractor over 100 is allowed in the program. Again, it's skinny down to 100,000 as a basis for the calculation.
Lance, what if I'm paying an employee 90 grand? Do I have to go through and figure out what the benefits are worth, or can I just take that 90 grand? Excuse me, I got a fly trying to attack me.
You just take the 90 grand, Bob.
Okay, very good. Number 4, a borrower kept everyone in payroll for the required 8 weeks and applies for forgiveness, and they lay everyone off. Or
that is a very tricky question. And I really, there are times, Bob, when I can project what I think may be the case. I don't know the exact answer to this. It is certainly not in the spirit of the PPP program. But, Bob, I think there'll be instances where this does, in fact, happen. At the time of forgiveness.
Local restaurants, Lance. I mean, you and I have friends who own restaurants. My friend tried to keep the staff on, and he kept them on, paid them for 30 days, and then maybe this case he pays them 60 days, and he says, hey, I got to let you go. I'm still close.
I need more money. Yeah. There will be circumstances, hopefully, when we get additional guidance, Senator Rubio and others are very interested in changing the protected period, changing the period where they have to spend the money, the 8-week period, to a longer period of time. And they're interested in allowing the 75% for payroll percentage to go out the window, and just, I don't know if they'll lower that and allow more money for mortgage interest, utilities, and rent, or they'll just say, hey, you got 4 categories you can spend it in. Percentages don't matter. Now, Bob, one thing that we're talking about before we came on, and I've gotten a lot of questions by email from lenders throughout the country, we need to, the example I use, Bob, is coloring inside the lines. We don't need to try to get too creative with what's acceptable on forgiveness. Probably the most common question category is mortgage interest. I think the intent for that is interest on mortgages for business properties. Maybe we'll get some additional guidance on that, but right now I've had questions like, the client has a loan on an airplane, and can they write off interest for their airplane loan? My answer is no. Don't do it. Don't accept it. Somebody asked about auto loans. Again, Bob, do you agree with me? That's not in the spirit of the law. It says mortgage interest, which mortgage interest to me tells me that it's intended to pay interest on loans related to business property.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Lance. I know both sides of the aisle are working to solve these fuzzy areas. So that's going to happen. It is
You
certainly
know, what would be real nice is when they do this. Now, I'm not seeing it in proposed legislation, but in those expense categories, just say rent on business properties, payroll, utility bills, include any utility bill, and interest on business loans. So
yeah.
that,
Yeah. I mean,
but right now it says mortgage interest on business loans. It says utilities on the business, rent on business property, and payroll.
well, we expect guidance. I'm calling it guidance 2.0 to hit. I'm going to say today, Lance. Would you disagree with that?
I really hope so. You know, the other common question that I'm getting by email from people all throughout the country is, how do we submit this? Right now, nobody really knows. You know, is it going to be something that's done? Well, yesterday we got some clarity on the 1502 reporting, and that helps a lot. It explains the process, especially for your smaller community institutions who maybe are not real seasoned at 1502 reporting. But SBA keeps throwing things out. Katie and I were talking about this, Bob, and you and I were in bits and pieces. You know, we get the forgiveness app, but we're not told anything about how we submit it. You know, so I expect more bits and pieces, and probably, Bob, if it's like SBA does historically, probably about 10 o'clock tonight, they'll release something.
And we promise when it hits, we'll do it. I don't care if it's tomorrow morning. As soon as it hits, we'll send a blast out to everyone so you can have it. Can marketing advertising expenses be included, and how would you label them?
That's a hard no, Bob.
That was easy.
Again, the categories are payroll, mortgage interest, utilities, and rent.
Very good. Make your life simple. Don't overcomplicate it.
Marketing and advertising. Now, I had a conversation with a friend of mine that got an EIDL loan. And EIDL loans are intended for operational expenses typically, and marketing and advertising expenses would be part of that. But the PPP loan has basically 4 expense categories at this point, and marketing and advertising would not fit any of those.
Where in the interim final rules do you see that the interest expense and other existing debt is not included?
It's not real clear. It's like the SOP 5010 is typically, Bob. It's a gray area. It says mortgage interest. Mortgage interest, you know, my definition of mortgage interest would be mortgage interest on a business. You know, you've got a small business loan with a mortgage on your business property. That's mortgage interest.
Yeah, I agree. I think, Lance, what you're saying is let's make life simple and not overcomplicate the process, because it's complicated.
We're talking about total forgiveness. Guys, when I counseled, I gave the example of my brother. I counseled him. He got a PPP loan. I said, hey, put it in an account, spend it all on payroll, and then you don't have to worry about whether or not forgiveness is a possibility. Now, I know that's not possible in all circumstances, Bob. There are tons of businesses that can't do that. But it's like I said earlier, guys, let's color inside the lines, which means mortgage interest, lease and rent payments, and utilities and payroll.
Lance, I know we're getting a ton of questions on logistics, and I suspect Guidance 2.0 will solve this. I mean, do you want to address this, or do you want to hold it over until we get the new guidance?
The answer is we don't know yet, and I expect it'll probably be through Coleman, but I'm not sure.
Very good. And finally, another logistical question: can we pay payroll out of the normal account and then reimburse that with PPP funds?
The answer is absolutely. They're just going to need documentation that payroll was made. You know, the only reason I ever encourage small business owners to have a separate account is it just simplified and clarified the payroll amounts that are being paid. But yes, they can pay payroll out of a normal operating account, reimburse that account with PPP funds. Yes, that would be proper spending.
Deborah asked a great question, and thank you for these questions. Says some of our customers are struggling to deploy PPP funds because they have employees that are making more on unemployment. They don't want to come back. Now, we've talked about that. We can exclude those, right? Exclude those employees, right, Lance?
The employees on the forgiveness application, if a small business extends an offer of employment to someone and they decline it, one of the reasons for decline could, in fact, be they're on unemployment, making more on unemployment. If you've got some sort of proof of a decline of offer in employment, that gives you a safe harbor on that employee.
And we agreed. It could be text, it could be email. It doesn't need to be notarized, just something simple. Correct, Lance?
You just need the proof that the employee declined to come back is not something that has to be submitted with the application. We went over this in the webinar. It's something the small business owner needs to keep in their PPP folder in case SBA ever comes and reviews it.
It's just a theme from SBA is when we get to talking about logistics and something like this, they're not too concerned about that, how it looks. What they're concerned about is you have no documentation at all.
Well, and SBA is certainly going to prosecute fraud, as we've already seen in a number of cases. There was one that came out yesterday, and Katie, I hope I don't steal your thunder for next week's Fraud Friday, but one came out yesterday where, the guy claimed to have numerous businesses involved in distribution of COVID-19 masks, and as it turns out, he only had one employee himself. So there are going to be cases like that. And I'm going to be honest with you, Bob, having been a former SBA employee, there's no way that they're going to be able to look at all of these. I think anything over $2 million is going to get scrubbed very hard. Your $50,000 and $75,000 PPP loans, unless it's fraudulent, they are not going to get looked at.
I concur. Can a borrower skip forgiveness and begin repayment of a loan? If the borrower does not complete the loan forgiveness app, can that impact the guarantee? Well, first of all, we don't care about the guarantee, right?
Well, in the case, the answer to the question is yes, the borrower could skip forgiveness and just pay it back under the payment terms provided, and there will probably be a pretty substantial handful of people who may choose to do that.
Shane asked the question, when we talk about mortgage interest, we're talking about business real estate property, and we are not talking about residential where we're taking a lien as additional collateral. Correct, Lance?
No. We're talking about business property. The small business owner who used her home equity line of credit as part of the equity injection, that's not going to count.
I haven't seen this question. Great question, Shane. What is your opinion on whether or not the bank can charge a borrower a fee for processing the forgiveness app?
Whoa. Not only is it a great question, it's not been addressed by SBA. And, my question is, there's a lot of discussion about third-party providers like CPAs who worked on the PPP applications and how are they going to get paid. And most participant banks were good to share some of the income on the processing fees with the CPAs on that. There probably are going to be people, Bob and Katie, who help on the forgiveness side and will need to be compensated in some way. I've not seen any guidance on how that would work. And, the one thing I can tell you from PPP, the borrower cannot pay. So if somebody is providing assistance on the forgiveness side to a borrower, the question is the borrower can't pay you. So, hey, Bob, I just walked myself back into the answer to his question. No, the bank can't charge the borrower for processing forgiveness. That's in the original processing fee. It's been pretty clear throughout the PPP program that the borrower is not to be charged a fee.
Yeah, I concur. I think that the bank reimbursement comes from that upfront fee from SBA. Hey, switching topics, we have an equity injection question from Linda regarding gift letters. And if the borrower receives a gift, they get the gift letter. We have that. However, do we need to verify the actual equity? Do we need to obtain a bank statement showing the funds deposited into the borrower's account prior to loan disbursement. Go through that real quick, Lance.
Hey, Bob, who asked that question?
Linda.
Linda, thank you so much. It is so refreshing to get a non-PPP question. You know, the answer to the question on a gift letter, you have to have a copy of the gift letter. You need copy of supporting documentation to show the source of the gift. So as an example, let's say my dad is gifting me $50,000 to be used as a equity injection on an SBA loan that I'm applying for. I'm going to need bank statements from my dad for 2 months showing the source of the gift. I need a gift letter that's clear that there's no expectation of repayment, that's signed and dated, and then we need proof of that money going in to the small business person's account.
I agree with you. And don't get bullied by a broker or by anybody who says, hey, the money's coming from Hong Kong. Lance, I've been to Hong Kong. They have this thing called skyscrapers and internet.
Yeah.
And PDN, so you can verify. It may not be U.S. dollars, but you certainly can verify. Hey, everyone, go ahead.
I was just going to say, SBA has always been real clear that proof of equity injection is very important, and it's especially important when there's a gift involved in the equity injection.
We're having our loan forgiveness guidelines part 2 on Wednesday. Again, we're assuming we get the guidance before that. If you registered, that's a second part of a double header. If you register for the first one, you're automatically enrolled in this one. Lance is doing a special webinar we're still putting together. We want to do it on before the deadline. I'd love to push this back a week, but you're going to do a 1502 reporting logistics, Lance, and how to fill out the forms.
Yeah, we're just going to cover all the details about when it's due, how to complete it, some of the guidance on, you know, the 1502 report. There are a number of columns that you don't even have to fill out on your PPP loans, but we're going to cover the guidelines, the timing, how to take care of it, which it's really important because this is how your institution gets paid that processing fee that every bank in America is waiting to receive.
No, I saw your preliminary PowerPoint, Lance. It looks awesome. With that, thank you all for your support in these interesting times. Keep the questions coming. Katie, Lance, have a nice weekend. And we are off. We are dark on Monday, so we'll see you on Tuesday. However, I promise if we get the guidance, we'll shoot that out to everyone. Enjoy your weekend as best as you can, and everyone, stay healthy and be safe.